Hello everyone, and welcome to another random video on the internet. Today, we'll be talking about a very interesting versus battle in my opinion. And for the first time on this channel, we're talking about a team battle. Kabuto plus his 4 Edo Kage versus Obito plus his 6 Jinchuriki. Just to be completely clear, I'm talking about Sage Kabuto from the War Arc, 4th Kaze Kage Raza, 2nd Mizukage Gengetsu, 3rd Raikage A, and 2nd Tsuchikage Mu, versus White Mask Obito from the War and his 6th Edo Jinchuriki. This one was actually suggested to me in the comment section of one of my videos, and I immediately thought this would be a great video. This battle was also particularly interesting to work on because I usually know who I think will win before rereading the manga and scaling the characters and so on, but this time I kind of had a general idea for who I thought would have the upper hand in the fight, but until I actually went back and reread the manga, I had no idea whose side I would be backing in this fight and who I thought would win. So it was one of the most interesting videos for me to work on personally. But moving on to the actual versus battle, it's a bit complicated, not because I don't know how to scale the characters, but because there are so many said characters. Like, seriously, Kabuto's team has 5 people on it, and Obito's has 7, that's 12 different characters to cover in a single video. So, unlike in my Itachi vs Nagato video, I'm not going to talk about each character's speed, power, techniques, and durability and compare them to each other's stats separately, but instead I'll do an overview of everything that one combatant can do and how they scale in terms of speed, power, what abilities they have, and everything like that. Then I'll move on to the next one and then to the third one, and you get the idea. I'll cover one team, then the other, and then move on to how the groups would interact with each other, what strategies they would use, and all that good stuff. Finally, I'll give my conclusion and who I think would win at the end. With all that out of the way, let's jump straight into this versus battle. I'll start with the members of Kabuto's team. First of all, we have Kaze Kage Raza. He has the least showings out of anyone in his team, and what he has shown leads me to believe that he is undoubtedly the weakest member of his team. He's able to keep up with early War Arc Gaara and somewhat match him in terms of power and seem to be kind of relative to him. Rasa has also subdued the One Tail several times, however his feats don't seem too impressive compared to the other members of his team, and saying that he's relative to Gaara is already a bit disingenuous because of a couple reasons. Firstly, Raza himself admits that what helped him stop Shukaku is his ability to use gold dust and mix it with the sand of his opponent, making the sand's movements a lot slower and duller. So he wasn't actually able to brawl with the One-Tails, he just used a trick to subdue him basically. And same with Gaara. Gaara's sand is weak to Rasa's sand, but Gaara is still able to brawl with Rasa consistently. So Rasa essentially has better sand than Gaara does and can counter Gaara's sand, but Gaara's still matching him. He's also surprised at how fast Gaara's sand moves and how it consistently outspeeds his own attacks and defenses, and overall the whole narrative of that fight was that Gaara surpassed his father both mentally and physically, and as we'll see later, other characters scale above this early War Gaara. Next up is 2nd Tsuchikage Gengetsu. Now, this dude is no joke, and even Gaara admits that he might be a bigger threat than Mu was, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Gengetsu's main abilities are his Genjutsu and Joki Boy Jutsu. Genjutsu is pretty self-explanatory. His clam summoning creates an illusion of Gengetsu and camouflages him and itself, and it's useful for deceiving enemies, creating openings for the real Gengetsu to attack, and so on. The clam itself is pretty durable as it was able to withstand an Oki charging at it with the intent of breaking it, but then it was shattered by him when he made his hand and the rock surrounding it a lot heavier. So I think a good punch from KCM Naruto would also do the trick. Gengetsu's Joki Boy Jutsu is a little complicated to explain, but in the simplest terms, It's a clone of Gengetsu that can move incredibly quickly, and the more it moves, the bigger it gets. After a certain amount of energy builds up inside the clone, it explodes, causing damage to all its surroundings. This clone, in its smaller stages, is faster than Gaara's sand, and that's pretty much all we can say about it. The reason Gaara thinks that Gengetsu is possibly more dangerous than Mu is because Gengetsu was a really bad matchup for Gaara due to Joki Boy's abilities to oil up and pretty much disable Gaara's sand, but he still found a way to beat him using Raza's Gold Dust, which is a bad matchup for Gengetsu. We never see Gengetsu fight anyone like KCM Naruto, so it's pretty hard to scale him, but I will say that Gaara's sand was shown to be faster than the 4th Raikage in the 5 Kage Summit, and it was also able to block the Amaterasu from Sasuke. So Gengetsu's Joki Boy should be faster than the 4th Raikage, and by extension as fast or faster than KCM-1 Naruto. Joki Boy is also seemingly invincible, and the only way to beat it seems to be immobilizing him and or sealing away Gengetsu himself. But this isn't really backed up by anything, since he didn't fight anyone with big destructive capacity. So I could definitely see Joki Boy being beaten if it's incinerated by something like a Bijou Bomb. However, this ability, while pretty strong, has a big weakness, and that's the fact that it reduces the real Gengetsu stats by a lot. And Gengetsu's biggest saving grace, in my opinion, is that he stalemated and killed the 2nd Tsuchikage Mu, who is a beast in his own right, as we'll talk about later. But overall, Gengetsu is a force to be reckoned with in terms of jutsu, but physicality-wise, he leaves a lot to be desired. Up next is 3rd Raikage A. Where do I even begin with this guy? He boxed with the 2nd strongest tailed beast head-to-head in a physical brawl on a daily basis and fought off 10,000 enemy ninjas for 3 days straight, and didn't die from the ninjas, he died from exhaustion, and probably starvation and thirst as well. He was able to dodge multiple attacks from KCM Naruto, and it took 3 tries for Naruto to actually hit him with the Rasen Shuriken. He also almost anti-Rasen Shuriken from him without taking any damage. But notice how I said almost. Many people hype up the 3rd Raikage's durability, and I'm not denying that it is great, but I think people are giving him a little bit too much credit. Notice how before the Rasen Shuriken hits him, the Raikage is drawn without almost any cracks in his body. Then after the Rasen Shuriken explodes on him, he is drawn with numerous cracks and bruises. Another thing worth looking at is this panel. Notice anything in particular? How about now? The Rasen Shuriken cut through the armor. Right here. The clothing of the Raikage was encased in lightning armor, and the Rasen Shuriken cut it off. You can even see the armor dissipating from the cut pieces. It was also directly shown to the reader that the Raikage didn't have his lightning armor anymore after the explosion of the Rasen Shuriken, suggesting that the Rasen Shuriken destroyed it. So someone with attack potency comparable to that of KCM Naruto's Rasen Shuriken should be able to break through the armor with a concentrated attack. Another thing is that without his armor, the Raikage isn't that durable. He was injured and actually cut up by one of Tamari's Winjutsu. Compare that to someone like Madara, who just tanked the exact same jutsu without even getting so much as a scratch. The 3rd Raikage is also really fast, but Naruto does tag him a couple times in the fight, and when he goes into Sage mode, which according to him has better reaction speed than KCM, he's able to surpass the Raikage in terms of pure combat speed. With that being said, it's heavily implied that just one full power blow from the 3rd Raikage could knock out and severely injure KCM Naruto and himself as well, so his attack potency is definitely above KCM Naruto's and his own durability, obviously. The strongest Kage, in my opinion, is 2nd Tsuchikage Mu. He's also honestly the one that I have the least to say about. Mu has the most hacks ability in his entire team, and that's of course particle style. With it, he can essentially one-shot almost anyone, and his speed is also nothing to sneeze at, since he states that his particle style is faster than KCM Naruto's movement speed, and Mu only got caught off guard by Naruto's weird abilities. Mu was also able to keep up with and outspeed Onoki, and has his camouflage ability, and can fly, and can split himself into two, though he loses the ability to use particle style if he does do that last one. One thing that people use to hype Gengetsu up to being on Mu's level is the fact that they stalemated and killed each other. But if you're Mu, you're affected by Genjutsu, and you can't see Gengetsu, how are you going to erase him from existence with particle style? Like, if you can't see your opponent, you can't erase them, or disintegrate them, or whatever. So, how would Mu win in that fight when he can't even see Gengetsu? Like, seriously, that was just a bad matchup scenario, like Gengetsu was for Gaara. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I need to say about that. Like, how can you erase someone that you can't see? And, like, I think Gengetsu is impressive, but not as impressive as Mu, because he was only able to stalemate Mu because it was a bad matchup for Mu. Lastly, we have Kabuto, who is undoubtedly the strongest and most tricky member of his team. His snakes can sense people and track them using their heat signature. He can make his snakes grow bigger in a matter of seconds. He can substitute himself with the snakes. He can shed his skin to avoid fatal damage, regenerate, has Uzumaki levels of vitality, can liquefy himself like Sugetsu, has great sensory capabilities, can mask his chakra presence, is a perfect sage, can block all visual genjutsu, can shoot this weird dragon that explodes and nullifies all of the opponent's senses, can dislocate his jaw, allowing him to swallow and capture his targets, can't be caught off guard by physical attacks, can manipulate inorganic matter, allowing him to control the environment, can produce and shoot webs that can't be cut using a regular blade, can use genjutsu that was strong enough to capture Sasuke and Itachi and they needed each other's help to break free of it, can use Earth style like Jirobo could, can use the Bone Kekigenkai like Himimaro could, can fuse with the body of his targets and kill their cells from the inside using Sakon's jutsu, can use Orochimaru's snake form to capture people, blitzed Itachi multiple times in their fight, Itachi being relative to KCM 1.5 Naruto as I established in my Itachi vs Nagato video, broke through his Susanoo aura barrier, which Madara used to block these giant rods thrown by KCM 2 Naruto, can use water style, fire style, chakra blades, and he's the only one that can undo the Edo Tensei. Jeez, that was a lot to go through. Kabuto is also able to dodge Sasuke's Susanoo arrow, and that's impressive because a weaker, non-EMS Sasuke was able to completely blitz both Danzo and pre-war arc Kakashi with this arrow. I mean, just look at Sasuke's reaction, this is clearly a big feat. Kabuto's nature manipulation was also fast enough to the point where Itachi didn't have the time to put up a full skeletal Susanoo, just a hand to protect Sasuke. As a reminder, a sick Itachi was able to put up a full Susanoo to protect himself from Kirin, which moves incredibly quickly, and that was sick Itachi, not Edo Itachi, who's faster, stronger, and can perceive things much better and so on. Kabuto was so OP that Kishimoto had to come up with this new Aspal Jutsu that we've never seen before, called Izanami, and give it to Itachi so that he and Sasuke could win. To be perfectly honest, if Izanami didn't exist, in a 1v1 battle, Edo Itachi versus Sage Kabuto, no holding back, going straight for the kill, I genuinely think that Kabuto would take it more times out of 10 than Itachi would. But I don't know, that might have to be a video of its own. Moving on to the other team, we have the 6 Jinchuriki. I just kind of grouped them all together because in terms of physicality, they're definitely relative to each other. They do have special abilities, which I'll be sure to mention, but yeah, physicality-wise, they're relative to each other. And these are not your average below Akatsuki level Jinchuriki either. It's made clear to the reader that they're amped by Obito's chakra and his Sharingan, so they're a lot stronger than they would normally be. In the fight, the Jinchuriki are shown to be relative to KCM Naruto and Killer Bee, who are relative to and or faster than the 4th Raikage numerous times. Fu dodges multiple full-speed attacks from Killer Bee, Yugito and Han are able to push Naruto and Bee back, Roshi is able to tag Naruto, Yugito keeps up with and catches up to Bee and attacks him, Han is able to get the drop on Naruto, and so on. Naruto also remarks that Han is strong, and numerous times the Jinchuriki are shown clashing with KCM Naruto and base Killer Bee, who was able to overpower the 4th Raikage. Then the Jinchuriki can enter their version 2 Bijou Cloak states and become a lot stronger to the point where they kind of just bully Naruto. And one thing that I could see people using to downplay the Jinchuriki is that Kakashi and 6th Gate Guy are able to take their attacks and keep up with them. But you have to remember that in the war arc, these two are nothing like they were before. They both get massively stronger than their previous selves. And I'd say that them tanking hits from the Jinchuriki isn't an anti-feat for the Jinchuriki, but rather just a good feat for Kakashi and Guy. For special abilities, Fu can use these little scales that reflect light to blind the opponents, and the only reason why Bee and Naruto weren't affected by it is because one of them has sunglasses and the other has sensory capabilities. She can also fly. Roshi has his lava style, which he can use to shoot these magma balls and create a lava wave. He can also go into his weird lava mode where he's surrounded by a lava shield. Utakata can produce bubbles that explode so hard that just one of them is enough to send KCM Naruto flying. Yagura is able to use his water mirror to create a double of his opponent and have them cancel out any attack that the opponent used. Yugito can grow claws and has this weird Ki Blast type ability. Utakata can also produce extremely potent acid from seemingly every single patch of his skin on his body, and this acid was strong enough to damage the A-Tails and some of the Paths of Pain in the anime. In the anime, Utakata also performed way better against the Paths of Pain than Sage Jiraiya did, and was able to give them the slip and injure them to a much greater extent than Jiraiya did in his fight against the 3 Paths of Pain, putting his power and speed above that of Sage Jiraiya's. Now, of course, this is filler, so I'm not gonna use that as a main point because I don't have to. Utakata already scales above KCM Naruto, but in this instance, it's just another thing that I'd like to point out. Then all the Jinchuriki can transform into full-ass tailed beasts, which can box with the A-Tails and shoot Bijudamas. They can also come together to make this one gigantic tailed beast bomb. And another big factor is the fact that all the Jinchuriki have linked vision and can flawlessly coordinate their attacks as well as dodge blindside attacks. And the one thing that I'll say is that their durability is not that great. KCM Naruto was able to almost destroy one of the chakra receivers controlling Roshi with just a normal Rasengan. And if it wasn't for Han coming in to stop him, he would have teared through Roshi, so someone like the 3rd Raikage should be more than capable of destroying that receiver. And the biggest weakness of the Jinchurikis is, like I said, that receiver. If it's destroyed, Obito can no longer control the Bijou and will be forced to retract them into the Geromazo. And now, the final combatant here today is Obito. Whew. This guy. He sees all of the crazy stuff that KCM2 Naruto can do and laughs. He can effortlessly block Rasengans from KCM Naruto, push Naruto back and make him wince just by casually swinging his weird fan, effortlessly keeps up with Guy and KCM Naruto at the same time in a taijutsu battle, catches and almost beats Naruto numerous times and other people have to constantly save him, phases through all of Naruto's, Guy's, Bee's and Kakashi's attacks, and is only ever damaged because of Kakashi's link with his Kamui dimension, tanks a Rasengan to the arm with 0 damage sustained. Seriously, he just keeps using the arm like nothing happened immediately afterwards. Like, you know that trope where anime characters will hold their hand even though a lot of the time the arm wasn't directly hit? Well, Obito's arm gets hit directly by a powerful attack and he doesn't even do that. Just a funny thing to point out. Obito also butts heads with KCM Naruto, gets headbutted by KCM2 Naruto and gets up like nothing happened. tanks a KCM2 Naruto Rasengan to the face and takes no damage from it, has the Rinnegan chains, which are capable of bullying tailed beasts, immobilizes the A-tails using those same chains attached to the massive Rinnegan rods. Anyone who touches the rods gets binded by chains. Obito can also use wood style that suppresses chakra, has Hashirama cells that greatly increase his vitality and grant him some level of regeneration, effortlessly reacts to KCM2 Naruto's attacks and phases through them, and the only time where KCM2 Naruto is able to really tag him without Kakashi's direct help is when Obito is going after Kakashi and isn't really paying any attention to Naruto. Obito is also able to instantly create a barrier big enough to protect the entire Geromazo and durable enough to withstand punches from fully transformed Killer B, and convince everyone on the battlefield that the only way to break the barrier would be to knock out or kill Obito. Before the war starts, Kabuto approaches Obito with a proposal of an alliance. Kabuto shows Obito the entire Edo Akatsuki, and Obito isn't frightened or intimidated by them in the slightest. He's not worried about making an enemy out of Kabuto at all. It's only when Kabuto pulls out Madara that Obito starts kind of pissing himself and agrees to let Kabuto join him. There are a couple interpretations of this situation though, and it mainly depends on what Obito would have done if Kabuto didn't have Madara. And there are three main options that he had: retreat, fight Kabuto and the Edo Tensei, or kill Kabuto before he has the chance to activate the Edo Tensei. In my opinion, the most likely answer is the second one, because Madara being there doesn't change the fact that Obito could still just retreat or kill Kabuto before he activates Edo Tensei. Him being scared of Madara implies that he was actually going to take on the whole Edo Akatsuki and Kabuto. Let that sink in. Obito, without his Rinnegan, is confident that he can beat Itachi, crippled Nagato, Kakuzu, Deidara, and Sasori, and to his knowledge, a possibly Orochimaru level Kabuto. Of course, Kabuto is much stronger than Orochimaru, but Obito wouldn't know that yet. So yeah, possibly an Orochimaru level Kabuto. And when you think about it, it makes total sense. The Rinnegan was constantly draining Obito's chakra throughout his whole battle with Naruto and the others, and the Rinnegan doesn't really give a user a strength boost or a durability or speed boost. Just some new jutsu and the ability to exert a lot more power in a single attack. Think of Shinra Tensei or Chibaku Tensei. Orange Mask Obito physically is the same as the Obito who could take hits from KCM2 Naruto like nothing and react to his attacks and keep up with them. Compare that to someone like Itachi, who, as I established in my Nagato vs Itachi video, is somewhere vaguely in the league of KCM 1.5 Naruto speed-wise, and way weaker in terms of raw power and durability. In fact, Obito actually wasn't even going for the kill the whole time against Naruto. He just wanted to capture him. Also, Obito throughout that whole battle was fixated on breaking Naruto's spirit. Even later on in the war, when Madara asks him how he wants to proceed, Obito, instead of just ordering the Ten Tails to kill everyone right away, chooses to instead slowly cripple their resolve. He was hell-bent on breaking Naruto and affirming to himself that the path he chose was the only correct path, and that Naruto, who reminds him of his previous self, is in the wrong. It's to fully convince himself that he's doing the right thing and that he didn't choose wrong, that someone like Naruto just can't be right. Otherwise, his whole life, decades of suffering and planning and hurting others and going down this dark path, may have been for nothing and just wrong. What I'm trying to say is that Obito was holding back the entire time, basically, trying to cripple Naruto's resolve instead of just outright capturing him or killing him. Obito can also use the Rinnegan Jutsu, though it would be really taxing on his chakra reserves, and it's already pretty hard to maintain control over all the Biju, so he'll only use it if absolutely necessary. Obito can also summon the Geromazo, which itself is an extremely powerful entity capable of causing wide-scale destruction with its chakra and Biju level physical feats. Seriously, Obito is insane. I know that in the novels Itachi was considered to be a rival for Obito, and some statements sort of lead people to believe that Itachi is relative to Obito, but overall that's a topic for another video, I think. I'm actually reading the Itachi novels right now, so when I'm done with them and I know the context of those statements, I'll probably make an Obito versus Itachi video. For now though, I just cannot imagine Obito losing to Itachi. Not with everything that he did in the war and would theoretically be able to do before the war as well. I imagine this as a similar situation to where Pain said that Jiraiya could have beaten him if he knew his secret. Like, the only way that statement could be interpreted to be correct is that if Pain meant that Jiraiya could have cast the frog genjutsu on all 6 paths of Pain at once or something like that, and he would have beaten Pain. But otherwise that statement is just flat out wrong, like Jiraiya is just flat out not strong enough to beat Pain. Also, in the anime filler, an Itachi who wasn't suffering from his illness yet was completely overwhelmed and outsped by a live Yagura to the point where he had to awaken the Amaterasu. As a reminder, a live Yagura in this case would be weaker than Edo Yagura, who we're talking about in this battle. Again, it's filler, I'm not going to use it as a main point of evidence, but it's still something that goes in Obito's favor. People like to bring up the fact that Obito stated that now that Itachi's gone, the leaf is no longer off limits or something like that. And like I said, I'll go more into detail in a separate video, but for now this statement isn't proof that Obito was scared of Itachi. 1. Itachi is a valuable ally to Obito and one of the strongest members of the Akatsuki. If Obito attacked the Leaf Village, then Itachi would leave the Akatsuki. Why would Obito want to lose one of his best soldiers? Like, there's no need to attack Konoha before the Pain arc anyway, so why would Obito do it and lose Itachi's support? Besides, if Obito wanted Itachi dead so he could attack the village, all he would have to do is call Itachi to a meeting and have the 6 Paths of Pain, Konan, Kisame, and himself jump him at the same time, and there's no way in hell that sick Itachi could take Obito, Pain, Kisame, and Konan all at the same time and win. If Obito wanted Itachi dead, he would have just done something like that and been done with it. And this leads into my next point. Obito knew that Itachi would die because of his sickness soon. His whole plan was for Sasuke to fight Itachi, and then when Itachi dies, to convince Sasuke to join him. Obito used Itachi as a tool to get Sasuke over to his side. There's absolutely no benefit to killing Itachi or attacking the Leaf Village before this can happen. So Obito, like any reasonable person would, didn't do it. And the leaf is no longer off limits because now he's completed his plan and now he can do whatever he wants with the Leaf Village. Another thing that was recently brought up to me is that Konan might be somewhat relative to Obito. I'll just let the comment speak for itself. Konan's fight with Orange Mask Obito is too often dismissed because of prep, but it should mean that she is at least somewhat relative to Obito, otherwise he would have killed her before she could do anything. If you disagree, then do you also think that given enough prep, Shikamaru could do the same thing? If he had the same knowledge of Obito's abilities and the same amount of prep? If yes, then what about Kid Shikamaru? Could he do what Konan did? I kind of see where you're coming from, but I don't agree with this point. Konan's entire arsenal consists of paper-based jutsu. She literally turns her body into paper. Konan set up this whole sea of 600 billion paper bombs that exploded for 10 minutes straight. How is someone like Shikamaru ever going to have those kinds of resources? Like, she literally opened up the sea and made it explode for long enough that Kamui's timer ran out. Replace Obito with Itachi. How is Itachi doing any better in that situation than Obito is? Would anyone who can't fly instant teleport or use an avatar to push themselves out of the hole do any better? I'm not talking about, like, Kaguya, for example. Like, and I know that Kaguya, even if she didn't fly, she would just tank the attack, but I'm just talking about, like, normal people. You know, like, not god tiers and not Madara and stuff like that, how would any of them do any better than Obito did? Like, put Kabuto in that position and he is screwed. And in the beginning of the battle, when Konan tries to blow him up, Obito lets her charge at him and literally states, "Let's see what your plan is." He's just toying around and taunting Konan during that first encounter, wanting to see what kind of pathetic plan she came up with. Obito is then taken completely by surprise and is still able to absorb the large majority of the explosion, and he himself states that the only reason the explosion did anything was because he underestimated her. And then at the end of the fight, when Obito is actually taking her seriously, Konan has this big speech about how she'll kill Obito and be the support that holds the bridge to peace, and in the manga, literally in the next page, Obito insta-blitzes her before she can even comprehend his movements. That's how large the gap in speed is. So let me just give you a little speed scale. Base Jiraiya was able to blitz Konan. Konan is slower than Base Jiraiya, who is slower than Sage Jiraiya, who is slower than Sage Naruto, who is either equal to or slightly faster than KCM Naruto, who is slower than KCM 1.5 Naruto, who is slower than KCM 2 Naruto, who is equal to Obito. Obito is so many levels above Konan that I really don't think that this should be a debate, to be honest. Anyways, my Obito tangents aside, let's get back to the actual versus battle. As you might be able to tell, things are stacked in Obito's team's favor. Rasa is slower than Gaara, whose sand should be faster than the 4th Raikage's movement speed. Gengetsu's Joki Boy should be faster than that, but not to an insane extent. Mu's movement speed isn't as great as KCM-1 Naruto's is, but his particle style is faster than Naruto was at the time. The 3rd Raikage is relative to or slightly faster than KCM-1 Naruto, and Kabuto could be on par with KCM 1.5 Naruto if you give him the benefit of the doubt. Meanwhile, all 6 Jinchuriki are relative to or slightly faster than KCM 1 Naruto, and Obito is relative to KCM 2 Naruto in terms of speed and reaction times and so on. For jutsu and special abilities, things get a bit trickier though. Yugito's Fire Blast attack and Roshi's Lava style could be countered by Gengetsu's or Kabuto's Water style, blocked by Rasa's Sand, or tanked by the 3rd Raikage. Joki Boy would probably be a bit problematic, but the Jinchuriki are fast enough to keep track of it and dodge its attacks. Utakata's Bubbles would also be a nuisance, but the 3rd Raikage can just tank it and the others can regenerate, even if it does do some damage. Mu's particle style is surprisingly going to almost be a non-factor, as the Jinchuriki could just regenerate, and Obito can either phase through it or absorb it with the human path, or negate it with Shinra Tensei. Obito, and by extent all the Jinchuriki, should also be able to see straight through Mu's camouflage ability, seeing as they have the Sharingan, and for those of you who think that that's a bit of a stretch, Anoki heavily implies that simple sensory type ninjas could sense Mu when he's camouflaged, so I definitely think that the Sharingan could see him, or at least see his chakra. Obito, and by extension the Jinchuriki, should also be able to see through Gengetsu's Genjutsu, especially since Obito is one of the best Genjutsu users in the whole series, able to perfectly control a perfect Jinchuriki and kind of replicate the effects of Shisui's Kodomatsu Kami, which Itachi was hyping up so much, with just his base Sharingan. And even if Kabuto is able to catch Obito in a Genjutsu, which I think isn't likely, Obito could just do what Itachi and Sasuke did and look into the eyes of one of the Jinchuriki and Genjutsu himself out of Kabuto's Genjutsu. Now, onto one of the saddest matchups in anime history. Like, seriously, this is just such an unfair fight. Yagura versus the 3rd Raikage. This might be the hardest counter that I've ever seen in anime. Yagura just uses the Aura Mirror on the Raikage, and then the two A's would just tear each other apart. And while the Raikage is regenerating, Obito uses the human path through Yagura's body to seal him away. Like, god damn, that's the most unfair matchup ever. Like, that's the hardest stop that I've seen in the whole Naruto series, besides matchups like Kage versus Kid Sakura or something like that. Kabuto's nature manipulation would be a bit of a problem. He could probably immobilize the Jinchuriki in their human forms for a bit, but they could just power up into their version 2 states and that wouldn't be an issue anymore. Fu's solar flare-like ability wouldn't work on Kabuto, but the Kage would be blinded for a couple seconds, and aside from the second Tsuchikage, none of them could sense what's happening and Obito could steal any one of their souls with the human path. Kabuto's Dragon Jutsu would be problematic for Obito's team as well, as it would incapacitate them for a little while. I could see Obito just activating Kamui as soon as Kabuto uses it though, and considering that Itachi was able to activate the Susanoo, a much more taxing jutsu, in the same conditions, I think Obito could definitely pull off a Kamui. However, the Jinchuriki will be vulnerable in that time. Kabuto could probably seal them away or break the receiver in the opening that the dragon would provide. Now, one really big drawback to the Dragon Jutsu is that it would affect the Kage as well. Like, they would definitely, their senses would be shut off as well for a few seconds, so they wouldn't really be able to move at all either in that time. But other than that, yeah, Kabuto could definitely use that jutsu to his advantage. Kabuto's webs can be burned away by Orochi or any version 2 Jinchuriki, and Obito can also slip through them. Kabuto's venom would also be a non-factor, as the Edo Jinchuriki don't have blood circulating through them, so the poison would not affect them at all. And Obito isn't gonna get hit by a snake or Obito's bite or anything like that. And even if he does get hit, he has Hashirama cells, which might actually be able to counter some poison. But I'm not too sure about that interaction. But Kimimara's bones wouldn't be a factor. Same goes for snakes and elemental jutsu for the most part. They could be used to apply some pressure, but not much else. Now let's go over the ways that both teams could deal with Edo Tensei. For Kabuto's group, Rasa seals them away. Kabuto uses his weird swallow tactic to seal them. The third Raikage or possibly Kabuto breaks that receiver. Mu could also vaporize it with particle style. Obito's team. Obito uses the human path, Obito uses the chains with the rods, and that's pretty much it. I feel like both teams are pretty even when it comes to this, though. Obito's team has a lot more sealing opportunities, and the sealing jutsu that he has would be a lot easier to pull off than any jutsu that Kabuto's team has, but the receivers are a huge weakness for the Jinchuriki. And like I said, the Raikage, Kabuto, and Mu could all take advantage of them. Obito, however, doesn't have that same weakness, and Kabuto's team will actually have to kill him. The one and only way that I can see for Kabuto to actually kill Obito is using Sakon's cell jutsu. If he fuses into Obito and kills his cells from the inside, he's going to win. And he doesn't have that same drawback that Sakon had, where the target could just injure themselves and force him out of their body. Kabuto wouldn't care because he can just regenerate afterwards. But it would be difficult to land this on Obito. Obito also has Hashirama cells and can regenerate, so it's possible that his Hashirama cells would combat Sakon's jutsu or something weird like that. I don't know, it's a really weird thing to think about. And 3 is Izanagi. Obito can also pull out the tailed beasts and have them launch that Mega Bijudama at Kabuto and whoever is left on his team to completely incinerate them. Though if Obito pulls that out too early in the fight when Mu is still not sealed, then they might get particle styled out of existence by him. For actual strategies that the teams would use, I think Kabuto's team would try to separate Obito's team into smaller groups because of a few reasons. 1. The shared vision. 2. Obito's team has way better teamwork and coordination while the Kage would just get in each other's way. And 3, they have the numbers advantage. But in the end, I don't think that they would succeed in that, considering that Obito is extremely smart and would definitely be aware of what Kabuto is trying to do and try to prevent it. And considering that he can literally control the Bijuu, they're not gonna get outsmarted by the Kage and Kabuto. He's just gonna pull them straight back to himself, basically, and they're just gonna stick in a group. If anything, he might just turn this around on Kabuto. I could actually see him employing such a strategy. He lets Kabuto's team separate the Jinchuriki from himself, and then he's left in a 1v1 fight against Obito, and he just summons the Jinchuriki back to himself, and he and the 6th Jinchuriki just jump Kabuto at once. So that would end really badly for Kabuto. Now, Kabuto could summon the Kage back to himself as well, but that would take more time because they would actually have to, get back into the coffins, and then the coffins would have to reappear next to Kabuto, and then they would have to open, and then the Kage would have to step out of that, and in the time that all that happens, Kabuto would probably already be dead with 7 people jumping him at once. And I also think that Obito will want to kill Kabuto, even if that means that the Edo Tensei can't be undone, simply because Kabuto is a big threat to his team, and if he is killed, then ripping out the Kage souls or sealing them with the chains shouldn't be too difficult. Overall, I think that the Jinchuriki, and especially Obito, are often severely underrated in versus battles, and I hope this video helps you see how broken they actually are. I think that Obito's team wins 9 out of 10 times with low difficulty, and even if all the Jinchuriki are sealed or the receivers are broken, Obito alone could probably solo Kabuto's whole team, if I'm being honest. And I even genuinely think that you could give Kabuto the 4 Edo Kage and the Edo Akatsuki excluding Nagato, and the result would still be the same. Obito and 6 Jinchuriki versus Sage Kabuto, Rasa, Gengetsu, 3rd Raikage, Mu, Sasori, Deidara, Kakuzu, and Itachi, and my money would honestly be on Obito's team taking it 8 times out of 10. Mid to low difficulty.
Was that last one too controversial? I think it might be too controversial.
In my opinion, Obito is the strongest person in the whole Naruto franchise besides Hashirama and Madara plus level characters. Or at the very least in the top 3, right up there with Casey and Minato and healthy, fully in control of himself, alive Nagato, though that might also be a topic for another video. Anyways, that was the video, the longest one that I've made so far. I mean, it's not surprising at all considering that I had to cover 12 different characters, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too controversial. If you do have anything to say about it and just debunk my claims, then please feel free to do so in the comments below. But other than that, have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.